Hello there. I've seen a lot of buzz recently about these free plugins from ZL Audio, or ZL Audio if you want to call them that. There's a few. I'm specifically looking at the compressor and the EQ, and the thing that draws me to them is not just the fact that they're free, because there's plenty of free plugins around. You know, everyone knows that. But the features that these plugins have are not typical of free plugins. They have a load of features which you would expect to have in paid plugins, but they're free. You see what I'm trying to say? A lot of people are kind of comparing these to the FabFilter stuff, which I don't actually use. I've got enough plugins. I'm told they're amazing, but I don't use them. But I just want to take a look at a few plugin features here that I think are really special and that I wouldn't expect to be in free plugins, and they may just change your life. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Here it is. So first and foremost, they are EQs, you guessed that. You've got loads and loads of bands. You can double click and include bands. You can bring them up, you can bring them down. There's got a load of different features on here along the top, which you do see in paid plugins, but I wouldn't necessarily expect to see in free stuff. So you've got like collision detection. If you bring something in the side chain, you can see which frequencies collide. But the thing that I want to take a look at here is the dynamic EQ feature. Now, everyone knows who's watched the channel, I'm a big fan of the TDR Nova. Great plugin. And you can sidechain something in and dynamically EQ a source based on another source. But this one kind of goes a little step further. It's something that you don't typically see in free plugins. And it's, well, let me show you what it is. So if we get rid of this one for a minute, let's just focus on this band. So you'll see this is my peak, and I've got dynamic mode on here. So we can turn on and off dynamic mode by clicking this. We can just drag the node up, or we can do it on these controls here, whichever one you want. The thing that I'm really interested in here is this little puppy. So what this does is, typically when you have a dynamic EQ, you can bring in a sidechain and you can say, right, so dynamically EQ this band when something else is present. And that's fine. And we can do that. So I've got the sidechain is the snare at the moment, and this is on the guitar bus. So we can bring down the high mid frequencies on the guitar bus when the snare is present. Let's try that. Pretty obvious. Now, I had those settings out extremely aggressive to start off with, still fairly aggressive now, just to make a point. But you can EQ based on a sidechain. We know that. What I really like, though, is that you can EQ based on a specific frequency of the sidechain. So this little puppy down here, if we drag it over to where the kind of the meat of the snare drum is, so this is like the low end, and we'll see it on the display. Let's just focus in on where that snare drum is. Where that purple is there. So we can focus the band around that specific frequency range and tell it to compress when that is present. It's a far more kind of specific way of dynamic EQing. Typically, if we're dynamic EQing kind of across the board, then it's fine. But being able to actually tune the sidechain to a specific frequency that isn't the one that you're aiming to kind of dynamically EQ, that's the key. Typically, if you're bringing in the sidechain, then it's going to listen to the area that you're EQing. So we're going to be EQing this area here, wherever that is, this frequency, 2.3K, and the sidechain is going to listen to that 2.3K area. But you can tell it not to. You can tell it to listen to another area. Now, I know a load of plugins have this. FabFilter probably has this, I'd imagine. Neutron from Isotope has this. A number of paid plugins have this. But to have this in a free plugin is very, very cool. It's just like a step beyond what you'd expect from something free. And we can go a little bit further with this with the second point, which is it's kind of like a target reference. So what we've got here is a diamond, and this is kind of the target point that we want it to be at. And when we're dynamically EQing, we want it to hit this area. Now, this may be part of the course for dynamic EQ users, but this is, I think, is kind of a novel way of thinking of dynamic EQ. So if we just make it so that we're not actually getting any kind of boost on here at all, let's just bring that just down to 0. Then what we want to achieve here is when the low frequency here, when the kind of resonance of the snare drum is present, we want the guitars to, in this frequency area, to be at this level. That's kind of a weird thing. So that's obviously dependent on the threshold, attack, release, knee, but it's a way of saying whenever there's a snare drum present, lock this frequency range to this area. And you can go in one of two ways. Previously, we just did that in a dynamic down kind of way, and let's just get a bit more of a feel for that now. You can get super aggressive. Like if you bring your release down to almost zero, you're basically clipping stuff off. So I'm not going to do that too much. But you can essentially bring down this frequency area. But you can also bring it up, which I know is a typical thing of dynamic EQ. That's great. But what I really find interesting here is we can say, okay, when there is low end in the snare drum, I want that area to be compressed or dynamic EQ'd. Or what we can say is when there is low end in the snare drum, I want the guitar to have high end or high mid range. So we can bring that target area up. And what you're going to hear is when that snare drum sounds, remember we're focusing the sidechain on the bottom end, so it's going to be quite specific. We want the high mids or the mid range, the 3K kind of area on the guitars to come up just for a moment. Just take a listen to that. I can think of loads of examples when that might be useful. For example, when you've got like your kick and your bass side change, you often duck down your bass line when your kick is present. Well, that's fine, but you're also kind of getting rid of your bass line, which may not be what you want. So what you can actually do is you can kind of shift that. So let's say, for example, we want this band to come down when that snare drum is present. And that's fine. We want it to listen to that area, and it's the same area that we're going to be compressing. So let's just bring this one down for a moment. So we're getting rid of that kind of 160-ish area when that snare is present. But we can also say that when that snare is present, in this area, remember this is kind of the side chain listen, we want to add some different frequencies. We want to add some, I don't know, some mid-range here. So if this were on a bass track, then you'd be getting rid of the low end that's clashing and bringing up the stuff that doesn't clash. So you can then bring up like some farty mid-range, some woofy mid-range, I don't know, whatever you want to do. It's a really creative way of doing things, and it's one that I like. It's one that I think when it's displayed in the way that it is here, and when you start to read the manual and realize what it's actually asking you to do to achieve this thing, it just kind of makes sense. So having these dynamic bands is great. Being able to tune the side chain is great, but being able to tune it to another frequency range is even better. And remember, dynamic bands go both ways. Dynamic bands are not just bringing the signal down when something else is present. You can also bring it up when something else is present. And those two things combined make for a very, very versatile equalizer, which I think, especially for no money whatsoever, is definitely worth checking out. Now, the compressor is extremely cool. Let me just play around with it for a minute and just kind of get a sound and just work out exactly what's going on, because you can get a load of different sounds in this compressor by just turning a few knobs, and it's really interesting. So I'm going to kind of change the displays and just sort of show you what's available as I go through it and just kind of generally compress this drum kit. Okay, we're getting some real thwack on that snare drum. A couple of things I want to show you here though. Makeup gain is important because we're taking level down when we're compressing and we want to bring it up again. Well, if you hover over this makeup section and then kind of come up, you'll see a little L appear. Now, what that does is automatically going to do gain makeup for you, but it does it with reference to LUFS, so loudness units full scale, which I don't actually, this is the thing, I don't actually know if other plugins do that. I don't know. I feel like it's probably done on an RMS basis, which is like root mean square, which is kind of an average. Doing it in LUFS, or at least telling us it's doing it in LUFS, is instantly kind of better because it's a buzzword. It's not actually better, it just kind of feels better. This is one thing that kind of occurs to me. They're signposting things in the right way. And typically auto makeup gain, I don't really use it all that much. I prefer to do it myself. But now that someone said it's based on LUFS, it's like, okay, let's try that. Let's see if it actually does it. So when you're playing it, you essentially just click it and it will analyze. And then once you click it again, it will adjust the makeup gain and make it so that it's the same LUFS level, essentially. So let's just try that. So it's analyzing. There we go. Take it off. Sounds pretty good to me. Doing it based on LUFS is obviously going to be more accurate to our ears, I guess, and based on our perceived perception of loudness. It's just a nice little feature. It's a great little thing to add. And being able to tune this sidechain, again, I'm talking about sidechains a lot. But being able to kind of shove more of one frequency area into the compressor or not is really useful. Typically on a compressor with that sidechain, you'll have like a high pass filter. So you say nothing below 200 hertz or whatever is going to get kind of registered in the detection circuit of the compressor. But you can go one step further with this, which you can do on other plugins, but not necessarily free ones, where you can kind of tune this and you can't just rely on it being like a high pass. You can do a high pass if you want, high pass there, but you can do peaks as well. So let's see where the kick drum is, for example. Just there. Actually, I think there's a bit of a delay, and that's actually the snare drum. This is the kick. So we can tell it to listen to the area where the kick drum is more or less. So if we boost this up, essentially what we're doing is we're saying kick, be more present in the detector of the compressor. So the compressor is going to be more aggressive to that area. Yeah, so you can hear when we bring the compressor on, it's just squashing that low end a bit more. Or we can tell it to not be, you know, as crucial in that area, which it may seem like it's not the most logical thing in the world. But think about this on a full mix. You've got your kick drum, which is very transient stuff and specific frequency, and then you've got your bass line, which is kind of moving around in the frequency spectrum. Kind of different notes are going to peak at different places. You might not want to do just that full high pass because it's going to be affecting the low end of the bass line and the kick drum. It's much better to be able to tune it to the kick drum itself because that's the transient thing that's going to be knocking the compressor out of whack. So if we tell it not to listen to the kick drum as much, and we've got different kind of shapes here as well. We've got crazy square shapes or really kind of gentle ones. We can tell it to be a little bit more aggressive or not as aggressive to a specific area. So let's tell it to not be as aggressive in the kick drum. So here, as I bring that up, we're just getting less kick or less low end in the kick. As I bring it down, we're allowing the kick to kind of jump through a little bit more. Why not do that to the snare drum as well? So as I bring it up, we're going to get less of that low end of the snare. And as we bring it down, it's going to kind of come up a little bit more because we're telling the compressor to not react to that area quite as much. So as I bring it up, we're going to get less of that resonance in the low end of the snare. And as I bring it down, we're going to get more. Yeah, so as I bring it down, we're getting more of the natural snare. As I bring it up, what we're actually noticing is that in that low end of a snare, we're just getting a more compressed low end of a snare. So that makes sense. As we bring it more into the compressor, it's going to be compressing that area more, so we're going to be getting more kind of thwack to it. So you can just tune this to whatever you want, and you can add like a few bands in here as well. So say you want to adjust how it responds to the kick separately to how it responds to the snare, differently to how it responds to, I don't know, let's go for like a high shelf, differently to how it responds to the high frequencies. And it's really malleable. You can manipulate this in loads and loads of ways. As well as that, you've got loads of different sounds in there. So you've got like pump, you've got smooth. You can really go to town on this and get some really different tones to it. Let's just mess around with it now. Wow, super grabby on the optical. I think that's particularly on the snare drum. So overall, these ZL Audio Compressor EQ, they're very, very good. They're very, very free as well, and I'd thoroughly recommend taking a look at them. I've seen lots of people with, dare I say it, clickbaity titles of this is the free Pro Q4, this is the free FabFilter stuff. The main reason people are saying that is because they've obviously made it so it looks kind of similar to it. And, you know, more power to them. It's a great way of displaying stuff. I don't feel like it's necessarily, because that's the thing, when you get like a plugin company that has a whole range of plugins, you're buying into that whole range, you're buying into the support and all that kind of stuff. Like, to actually download these, I had to go to a GitHub page, and it wasn't quite as simple as just going on to, you know, fabfilter.com and just downloading them. So you are getting those two sides of it. Free plugins have their little quirks, should we say. Last night when I was trying this out, on the compressor, whenever I pressed pause, the display just shook a little bit, like on the actual compressor itself, which was weird. I wouldn't expect that to happen in a FabFilter plugin, or there's probably something they would patch pretty quickly. But for what you're paying, which again is absolutely zero, it's unbelievable. They are so cool. There's so much you can do, and I've basically just scratched the surface with this minute review. But jump over to their page, give them a download. What you're waiting for? They're really great. The EQ, the dynamic EQ, that gain target thing is cool, but able to tune the sidechain in many ways is great. And the compressor just sounds very good in lots and lots of different ways, and you can make it sound like most compressors, which is good in my book. Thanks for checking it out. I'll see you again soon. Take care.